Welcome to the new series. It's episode 1 of the Italeri Battle for the Reichstag 172 scale diorama build. It consists of the Reichstag building, which is made out of MDF. Also contains plastic kits. It contains a T-34 Russian tank, Russian infantry, German infantry, a Flak 37 gun, and its crew. So we'll take a look in the box. First thing we find is the instruction booklet, which is more of a hints and tips, and nice and colourful. And it just shows you roughly the colour scheme of the kits inside the box, and just gives some hints and tips on the diorama aspect of this kit. Next we have the sprues for the Russian infantry and the T-34. The sprues for the German infantry. Some decals to go on the kit when it's finished, some posters, and also the writing above the main entrance. Then we have the MDF, and there's about 20 to 25 sheets of MDF in the pack, and also the construction instructions. As you can see from the front page there, it's the 2 side towers, 2 main hallways, and the main hall. It does include the dome that was on the Reichstag, but overall this is a quite detailed kit. I found that the instructions are a bit vague in places and a bit hard to follow, as none of the sheets of MDF are numbered, so it's a case of matching the silhouettes in the instructions to what you see on the sheets of MDF. And we'll have a look at the actual MDF itself. As you see, it's laser cut and quite highly detailed with bullet holes and cracks. Multiple layers form the structure of the building. As you can see from these sheets, there's a lot to take in, and you need to be careful that you do take all pieces off the sheet before discarding it. We'll make a start on the 2 side towers, and the first part is the base. The first part of the base is just a simple box section. All the parts are on one sheet, and do remember you have to do 2 of these, so there are multiple sheets identical to this one. So make sure that you know exactly what you're working on. As you can see, that's our first sheet completely emptied. Pieces generally fit together in 3 distinct ways: tongue and groove, or here we have locating pegs and locating holes, or a brickwork type fashion, as you'll see on some of the parts a little bit later on. So for this part, we're just making a box section. This will sit at the side of the diorama, so there's a front and a side, but it's 2 sides that are blanked out because they won't be seen. It's always best to dry fit, so we'll go ahead and do that before we add some glue. As you can see, the box is starting to take shape, and this is just the inner portion with the very inside walls. And if we look at the top of the box, you'll see there's two sides that jut out. These are the front and side, so you got to make sure that these go to the corresponding side walls. Once you're happy with the dry fit, you can go ahead and start gluing, which I'm doing here. And I'm just using ordinary wood glue, in this case Gorilla wood glue. Any white glue would probably do, even PVA. And just go around, glue into place the parts that you've dry fitted. The wood glue generally starts to dry after 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll actually feel the strength in the sections that you've glued after this time. Then you can go on to fit further parts. Some parts of the kit you're able to do in a modular fashion, building 2 or 3 modules and then putting them together at the end, which I found quite useful during this build. Once you're completely happy with all the pieces being glued into place, you can use elastic bands. This will keep the parts together and allow the glue to dry without the joints coming apart. Once you've got the parts clamped together with the elastic bands, you can just go ahead and slap on some more wood glue just to reinforce any seams. And if they're on the inside and not seen in the finished product, you can be quite liberal with the glue. Now fit the top to the box section. Like I said, be careful, make sure that the bits jutting out are on the corresponding walls. And that will just sit in place on top. Ready to be glued. Again, just apply glue on the edges. And again, this part can be secured with elastic bands once it's on. And that's the main core of the base section done. We can now move on to the windows at the bottom. As you're gluing these parts, do make sure that you remove any excess glue, just to make it look neat and tidy. And we can put that to one side to dry. The lower window sections can be glued together off the model, and it's just a backing piece against the open window area. So apply some glue, put the 2 pieces together, lined up, and they can be clamped and left to dry. And just repeat it again for the next piece. Once they're together, they can be put to one side to dry, and we can move on to the next module, which is the lower chamber of the tower. The next module is pretty much the same. It's a box section. So take the parts off the sheets of MDF, and these go together in almost identical fashion, with an inner core and an outer skin. following the instructions, we can put in the middle support. Again, dry fitting first, and then it can be glued in place. The bottom piece is another shaped piece. As you can see, it has the column supports, and these correspond to the two parts that stick out on the lower base. So make sure you get the orientation right. Again, once dry fitted, it can be glued in place. If we dry fit these two parts together now, you can see that the column supports on the bottom of the box section line up with the locating holes on the bottom section. These will hold the columns in place later on in the build. So we'll carry on with the second module. We now want to fit the front side of the second module, and this is a three-part section with two filler parts on the inside with the outer detail part on the outside, and this will complete the box shape section for the second module. It's dry fitted, it can be glued in place, and the outer detail section can be fitted to this module. Once you've got the basic shape ready for the outer skin, which is the parts with the detail on them, they should be fit on top and locate on the pegs. So you can go ahead and fit them when you're ready. Once they're glued in place, secure with elastic bands, and then the two edge trims, the upper supports for the columns can go in place and be glued. And that'll be this module finished. All the parts for the lower base should be dry now, so we can go ahead and finish that off. And these walls go underneath the parts that are jutting out. And they're fitted into place with a small side retaining wall. And this was the brick fashion join that I was talking about earlier. It can be put into position, glued into place. Heat on the other side. And then the front wall can be put into place, and this will hold everything in its proper position. Once that's dry fitted, it can be glued into place. and just repeat for the second wall. And that's the base completed. As you can see, it looks completely different with a bit of detail on it. Now we can fit the two modules together, and as you can see, there's holes in the top of the base where the columns will locate, as well as the supports on the second module. The next part we're going to look at is the columns, and each column is started off with an interlocking section that forms a cross. And at the bottom you'll find a locating pin, and simply slide it through the column supports, finding the corresponding grooves. Slide it down to the bottom so it locates and it's flush at the top. And it requires an extra support at the bottom. Just slide it up, put the support in place and slide it back down again, so it's all located. And repeat the process 3 more times so that you'll have 4 column cores in place. The next stage is to take 4 column flutes, which are these thin stick parts, and slide them in the remaining holes in the column supports, right down to the bottom. There's 4 for each column, and this will give the column the rest of its form. And again, do this for all 4 of the columns. It's the same process for all 4 columns, so go ahead and do that. And once that's done, you can just glue the tops and the bottoms of the columns, and add a little bit of glue down the column if you want. Once the columns are in place and secured with glue, is an end cap that goes at the top, and this is 3 parts, 2 side walls and a front part. And that basically just boxes in the top of the column. And again, do this for all 4 of the columns. We can now move on to the final module, which I call the crown, and we'll be fitting that in place on the tower that we've already built. And it starts with this distinctive floor that has slots cut in it to take in the spires. Pushes down and glues into place. As you can see, it's starting to take real shape now. And the final piece to the tower is what I call the crown, and it starts with a box type base. The open retaining walls then go into place around the top of that, and it's capped off with a roof piece with retaining walls. So I'll go ahead and build that. First part of the crown is the box section that will fit inside the spires, and it will take the open retaining walls. It can be secured with elastic bands while it dries. Sits on top beside the spires like that. Decorative inserts that go in front of the box where it joins the main chamber. And these open railing walls go in next. They interlock so you can dry fit them before gluing. Once you're happy with the fit, you can go ahead and glue and secure it in place with elastic bands while the glue dries. Once you've put the roof onto the crown and the feature walls and repeated the whole process for the second tower, you're left with this. So that's the first part of the diorama built. So we're going to leave the video here. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.